in kind of prepping for the 5 habits, the one thing I have in the back of my mind is really thinking about at the end of each one what I'm going to be pushing people to, or kind of motivating them to do, or encouraging them to do.
Yeah.
But the first habit, reading the Bible, just kind of trying to illustrate the importance of how I really like the hook about that kind of the element that you mentioned, where it talks about we're already in the bad habit of listening to lies.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a strong point to basically utilize strongly for this, that the Bible is where we get God's truth. It's inspired by God. That reading the Bible is how we learn how to honor Him in our lives.
Yeah.
And then pushing them to utilize the reading resource, the reading plan, chapter a day.
Yep.
And then, the second habit of prayer, really kind of poking fun a little bit at I think what a lot of people do is those standard times of prayer,
Mm-hmm.
praying for dinner, praying for before you go to bed, and making a little fun of it, kind of a robotic, to emphasize that prayer is more than that religious practice of you got to say a prayer a certain way, and trying to emphasize that the praying is the relationship, the communicating with God, being in relationship with Him. And I think that's what I feel that verse is really pointing to, that never stop praying, is that we're supposed to be in continual communication with God throughout the day, in our lives, and trying to get people to develop the habit of really, carving that time out to develop the habit of continually being in prayer with God. And then the connecting, using the connecting as kind of emphasizing that it's a team thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not we weren't meant to live our Christian life as in alone, live out this life alone.
Mm-hmm.
And so using the connection as we're supposed to connect with one another intentionally for that support, that encouragement, to live out our faith, to live in a way that honors God. And then utilizing that the Hebrews 10:24 and 25 to encourage that we're motivated when we're connecting with people during the tough times, times when we feel like we're failing or losing,
Yep.
And then the habit of giving, I really like we always talk about giving in three ways, time, talents, and treasures. But the focus that I'm going to make is really on the treasures part, and giving of our money.
Yeah.
And tease it a little bit, using, we always like to give the stuff away that we're done with, that we don't need anymore.
Yep.
But then emphasize that, really giving our money to the kingdom and to the work of God. I like the phrase that's giving to the things that matter to God.
Mm-hmm.
And then really specifically for the Brigham City campus is trying to make a connection between their giving and the giving that was done by other people, so that the Brigham City campus could actually be something, as an example.
Yeah, that's great.
That now we have the opportunity to give, to reach people in Brigham City and beyond.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's good. Well, and even it might be an opportunity for you as the pastor there to just for a minute explain how giving works and how as your people start giving more, that just allows even your campus to move forward and reach some of the goals that they want to reach. Maybe just an opportunity for you to be a little honest about kind of where you've been with some of that, and because a lot of it. I mean, I wouldn't, don't sidetrack it too much, but I think that'd be a great personal thing to throw in there.
Yeah.
Okay, so then the fifth habit of mentoring, and I think that's that'll be the shocker. That'll be the one that people will be like, "What? What are you talking about?" But to go back to foundations, we say we grow by helping others. And the ultimate way to do that is what we call mentoring or disciple making. So for some people, it might be kind of the first time they really hear that concept. So you might have to sort of explain that word. Like every Christian can mentor somebody, and it's actually a habit that you have to develop because it's not just going to happen.
Yeah, and these last two, I actually haven't been able to put a lot of thought into it, but the one thing on the mentoring that I think will be strong is for people to make a connection between most people are already in relationships that they can mentor people, I think.
Yep.
Most people have close friends that call them when they're when they're going through something or when they're in need, that type of thing. And so what I want to do is make the connection between those already existing relationships and the resource to use within those relationships that they already have.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Ryan is so passionate about that. The guy who shared about the guys that he's mentoring at work, and man, it's really cool to see. Like, I think 5 years ago, if we were to say go make disciples, you're thinking, okay, I've got to go tell someone about Jesus. I got to go find someone to tell Jesus, and tell them about Jesus. But really, what Ryan says is, it's just bringing a little more structure to your conversations that you're already having, and allowing that tool to bring some structure to it, and it really does open up a whole new world of talking about stuff that matters to them. It's not necessarily spiritual stuff, although it's there's biblical principles behind it. If it's from our library, but it opens up doors, and that's what really has happened with Ryan.
Yeah. And I think I still want to also get in there the intentionality part to make sure that people don't think that it's just for I want some way of motivating them that you want to be initiating relationships where at some point in that relationship, you'll have the opportunity to mentor.
Yeah.
But easiest place to start is obviously with those people that you're already in relationships with.
Right. Or really the easiest place to start is at home, right? So for parents to realize, that might be the easiest application for Sunday is, parents, you are mentors, but if you don't intentionally every week take time to intentionally speak truth and do family talk, do family devotionals with your kids, it's not going to happen. So if you don't create that habit in your home, it's not going to become a habit in your home. Your kids aren't going to create the habit, So use those tools, use the kids' tools that we have every week, use some of the other kids' conversations online, and get in the habit of speaking truth. I mean, it goes back to the Bible. That brings it full circle. It goes back to reading the Bible. Your kids are already getting a lot of other crap into their heads. And so if you see yourself, parents, as mentors, you're going to bring God's word into their week, right? I know I can speak passionately about that because my kids won't naturally do it, just like they won't naturally do their homework. You know?
Yep.
And that's the point of a habit. Sometimes we forget about that habit. We forget about we put time into their sports or their school or whatever, but we don't ever aside from bringing them to church, we never really sort of bring God's truth into the world. So I would say family devotionals would fall under habit 5, and that might really click for people. And then you can bridge that to these other intentional relationships in their world, out of their small group, at work, whatever, in their world.
Yeah.
Okay, so how are you going to set the hook? Getting into it, how are you going to intro the habits? I think what I do is I talk about a habit that I had growing up. Are you going to do something like that? You're going to share a personal, like a funny habit or something like that from your life?
Yeah, that was the plan. That's kind of what I wrote down was some kind of a story about a habit to help them connect with, help make the connection with good and bad habits.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, there's a great, if you go to the post online for this sermon, there's a great related resource at the bottom titled, I'm looking at it now, The Anatomy of a Habit. And it's just a little 3-minute video. So it's a supplemental video that small groups could use if they want. But if I were you, I'd watch it because it might give you a little bit of content to share if you feel like you have time to share it. But they talk about how a habit isn't just the thing, but that there's a trigger before the habit, and then there's a reward that reinforces the habit. So the anatomy of the habit is these 3 things. It's the trigger, the habit itself, and then the reward, so that it continues to happen now, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. And it's kind of an interesting way to think about that. Again, it might be, I haven't decided whether I'm going to incorporate it. It might be a little sideways, but I'm probably going to reference it when I tell my story live about biting my fingernails. I'm probably going to say, because in essence, what my mom was doing is she was stopping the trigger. She was getting me to realize, oh, whoa, because it had become a habit. I didn't even think about it anymore.
Yeah.
And so she was stopping it. So she was working against. She was trying to break that cycle, which I think is pretty interesting. I think that's going to be a pretty popular conversation right there. The anatomy of a habit. I'm eager to have that one with my kids, actually.
Yeah. I'm going to look at that.
Yeah. And it gives you a chance to plug the resource, plug the, hey, if you check, I tend to teach with my phone right there. And I say, I'm looking at it right now, today's sermon post, and there's questions down there and the outline and everything. And there's some related resources. And at the bottom of this one, it's really good. You should check out The Anatomy of a Habit. I'm going to do that with my kids this week. So again, it's reinforcing this idea that I hope you're not just leaving this sermon here,
Mm-hmm.
Because remember that third thing in teacher training, we're trying to empower conversations.
Yeah. Yeah, and that would be good because that was one of the things I was thinking in preparation was to kind of look up the definition of the habit,
right?
Just to refresh it so you can, be able to just clarify it.
So the other thing I had that I wanted to ask you as you're thinking about it, and this might affect the way you preach this, might be another thing to say in here at some point, is which is your strongest and which is your weakest. To try to put a little bit of a personal spin on this and really show,
Mm-hmm.
because that's one of the questions at the bottom. Give yourself a grade on each of them. Which one are you eager to improve, and why? And it might be good, just might be an opportunity to just sort of, reduce the distance from pulpit to pew.
Yeah.
And say, for me, these 5 habits, this one here is the one I struggle with. Maybe even when you say it. So habit number 3, connecting. All right, that one's the one I struggle with. I'll tell you that right now. And I encourage you to think about which habits you're good at and which ones you really need to strengthen in your life. But this is the one I need to strengthen. I think that's a simple way to get people's attention and really get them to think about actually applying this truth in their life.
Yeah, you get them to, if you're willing to answer the question,
yeah,
they're going to be more apt to think of the question themselves.
That's right. Yep. Yeah, so you'll model it for them, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to answer that, but I think that'd be a good thing. I'm going to include that when I preach this. Is now this, for me, actually, I'm going to say habit number 2. This is the one I struggle the most with right now. I have a hard time stopping and taking time. I tend to just get to work. I get up out of bed, I have my cup of coffee, and then I get to work. I've got so much to do,
Yeah.
I have to remember to carve that time out to really make a habit of prayer. And I'm probably going to say habit number 5 is my strongest right now. I'm passionate about it. I'm mentoring several people throughout the week, and I love it. I mean, it's my favorite thing to do during the week. So again, that will hopefully get people's attention and say, wow, I don't ever do that. I wonder if I could do that,
Yeah. Yeah, that's.
My impression is this is one of those sermons you could probably do without notes if you trusted yourself to stay focused, because it's pretty simple. It's slide 1 verse, slide 2 verse, habit 3 verse, habit 4 verse, habit 5 verse. So it's just, it goes and flows, and it kind of has to just sort of keep moving, right? But to me, this is a very conversational type of a sermon. You can't really dwell too long at any point. You got to think about where you're really going to set your hook. Yeah. So I like what you said, emphasizing habit 1, emphasizing that you already have the habit of listening to lies. So reading the Bible is important in this age of information, so that you can counter all the lies you're being fed every day, even though you don't know it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's thought of a kind of very similar to, I think, the illustration that you had is an illustration with the balloon. We're getting filled up by radio, movies, news, everybody else's opinion. All these lies are filling it up. What's going to come out if we're not putting God's truth in? It's only going to be lies that come out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah. The one thing I discovered is that if I teach with more than minimal keynotes, I end up getting lost because I don't look at it enough.
Yeah.
I don't look at it enough to know where I'm at.
Yeah.
So I have to have minimal bullet points at the most to be able to feel like I'm moving through the message, because I don't read it anyway.
Yeah.
But maybe it is somewhat of a, I don't know. I guess it could be used as a handicap to some extent, but I asked. That's one of the feedbacks I got was. I asked what the difference is with me using minimal notes as opposed to a fuller outline. And that's exactly what the response I got is, that it's more conversational.
Yeah. Yeah, and I personally think that's good. I don't think you want to look super polished and I mean, our goal isn't to separate ourselves from the crowd. Our goal is to make people feel like that's just a normal guy. I didn't even think like I didn't even feel like he was preaching at me. I felt like he was just telling me 5 habits I should have.
Yeah.
Like we're having a conversation. I just can't talk, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is a good one for that. And it just to keep, you know, keep your pace going, but just know where, because this is the one I noticed as I was watching the studio version, it felt a little bit flat. So I think you need those couple little stories in there strategically placed, or hooks or whatever strategically placed. So I felt like this was sort of flatlined, like from 2, 3, 4, 5. Number 1 was great. It had that thing about information and garbage in, garbage out. That was great. But then it kind of just went this way a little bit. I think it's easy to do that with a kind of an informational type of sermon. So that's the biggest thing I'm going to guard against is, you know, have something interesting to get people back engaged.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. 3, 4, and 5 is where, you know, as far as providing levity, the only, you know, I've on the giving part, you know, kind of making a little light about giving away our garbage, you know, and thinking that we're giving a lot. But apart from that, I'm not quite sure where else
I think in habit 3, I think I'm going to tell a little monk joke in there. You know,
about like monks isolating themselves type of thing.
Yeah, like, you know, some of you guys maybe would be just fine with that. You know, like my monk thing seems good to me. You know, but because you think that that's very spiritual, right? It's not. It's actually not. Biblically, I don't think it's very spiritual. But when we think of a spiritual person, we think of this monk, you know, quiet and separated and just isolated from everybody. That's really nowhere in the Bible, you know.
Yeah.
That was the creation of religion. We need each other. We can't be islands. So there, you know, there's some fun, there's some giving jokes, there's some giving levity you can throw in there, maybe, you know, getting baptized and holding your wallet out of the water or whatever, you know, maybe a funny thing about money if you have something like that. I mean, that's what I'm gonna try to find something for either 3 or 4, something a little bit more lighthearted to get people laughing and engaged still.
Yeah.
You know. But again, the pace has got to be fairly quick, really.
Yeah.
You know, the other thing, every once in a while, it's good to watch the kids video and even to show it. This one was pretty funny because it's the shtick that they use in the kids video is hey kids, you know what habits are? And then Jaden Van Ingen shows up dressed up like a hobbit. And
yeah,
that's
I watched that one.
Not a hobbit, a habit, you know.
Yeah.
So it could, every once in a while I'll throw that in instead of the sermon intro. Like I'll just jump up and do the intro myself and then say, hey, before we get into this, I want you to see what the kids are seeing. It's the same basic sermon we're going to hear today in just a few minutes, but it's a lot funnier than what I have to say. Take a look, you know. And so, you know, you can plug the family thing and the kid thing. And really the sermon intro is not that groundbreaking. So I might just throw in the kids video instead of so what I would do is I would get up there and pray out of the song and sort of kind of, you know, intro the series and intro the morning for a minute. And then say, now before I get into the 5 habits, and you get your pencils ready because you're going to take some notes today. I just want to show you what the kids are watching. It'll really kind of help frame it for us, and it's just a little funnier than what I'm going to say, you know. And then if I do that gives me a Hobbit joke to make later on if I want, you know. All right, habit number 3. Habit number 3,
Yeah. Okay.
So Adrian, did you have any other questions or comments about, again, I think it's pretty straightforward, really. Just a matter of, throwing in some of your own personal stuff, maybe being ready to be vulnerable a little bit on a habit that you're weak at, and be, really challenging on a habit you're strong at. Is there anything else, any other questions, just big picture or little picture you have about the sermon?
No, I don't really. I'm just looking it over real quick just to think if there was.
One of the things you mentioned in the community was the distinction between connecting and mentoring. And, just for the video's sake, I'll explain. I don't know where I lost you.
Right before you started to explain the difference kind of between the kind of how you were just making a distinction between a little bit of the overlap between the connecting and mentoring.
Well, I don't know what's going to be on the broadcast, but I might be repeating myself. But basically, habit 3 is fellowship for my good, and habit 5 is mentoring or leading people for their good. Right. So when I explain habit 3, I'm not going to say get into a small group so that you can challenge people and you can step out and become a leader. I'm not going to cross into that, because that's really habit 5.
Yeah. No, I like that. I thought that distinction, I think that brings a little clarity, and I think it helps. It helps because both of them are good points. We need the support, and then we also need to be supporting, encouraging, mentoring others.
Right. Yeah. And so in foundations, that's 2.3 is we need the support, and 3.3 is they need the support.
Yeah.
The 2.3 is where the recipient, 3.3 is where the giver, the mentor, the parent, the small group.
Now, do you think it would cause any? I don't think it would cause much confusion, but if depending on time, but even in that mentoring thing where it's talking about, or we're talking about mentoring others, is to give an example of. Would it be overlap to give an example of the benefit of mentoring in your own life at that point?
No, I think it'd be great. Yeah, because that is true 3 of foundations, is that's how we grow ultimately.
Yeah.
We grow by helping others and making disciples. And so it's not just for their benefit. You'll find out it's for yours also.
Yeah.
And again, I think with mentoring, make sure you use the word disciple making, because people don't know what that means yet. So for now, while we're still rolling out the concept, we have to just say both words, I think.
Yeah.
When I say mentoring, I don't mean just like in a secular sense. I mean biblical mentoring, making disciples, intentionally, personally helping someone else pursue God. Like I mentor my kids. Tracy and I, we mentor our kids. I mentor some of these other guys in my life. Like I'm coming alongside of them every week, having conversations. Every week. We use the resources in the library, but every week I schedule it and I have conversations with these guys. And I'm pouring biblical truth into their life. You know, because again, it's super. So I just explained it in 20 seconds. So that I just explained mentor training in 20 seconds. You know.
Yeah.
I defined what it was, and I explained it in terms of the resources.
Now, would you say that this would make cut the mentor training shy, as far as a description of it, to say that the mentor training is training on how to use the resources?
No, that's exactly
to mentor.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yep. Yeah, I think that's how you say it. It's training for the Pursue God resources. You know, it's not just generic. I mean, there are some principles certainly in there, but yeah, great.
Yeah, that's how I was gonna point them to, describing the resources and pointing them towards that, as the mentor training.
Yeah.
Kind of shows you how to use the resources to mentor.
Yeah. Well, we've got a training going on Saturday morning at Layton campus, so I'll be eager to see how that goes and how well attended it is. There are over 40 people signed up for it, so we'll see who shows up. You know.
Yeah.
And we'll see if it just clicks for them. You know, it's interesting. The concept has clicked with everyone that I've been mentoring, because it's pretty easy and it's pretty valuable and life-changing. So not even almost. Everyone I'm mentoring, well, almost, but at least everyone I've been mentoring for over 3 months is mentoring someone else now, at least one other person. So because it's simple and it's reproducible and it's systematic, I'm not being really sort of nebulous about what mentoring is. No, it's just having weekly conversations that are scheduled, that come from the resources. Is, you know, which ones you pick. You know, it's not, nobody's going to tell you which ones to have. You guys need to decide what truth you need to discover this week. You know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with that in mind, it feels free enough, it feels open enough, and it's valuable. You know, people want it. They really do. Kids might not want it, but they don't get a choice.
No, they don't. Yeah, I really, when I saw the outline and the mentoring in there, because once I got clarity on what mentoring was, I shared it with my overseers, mm-hmm. and their automatic reaction was that they wanted to take it directly to with the small groups, and which I thought was great, the excitement for it, because they viewed it themselves, the mentor training, and so I'm looking forward to it. You know, this is for the majority of the people that are going to be sitting there on Sunday, using the word mentor in lieu of discipleship, mm-hmm. will be a little different.
Yeah.
But that's simply all you have to say is, we're going to call it mentoring.
Yep.
You know, it's discipleship, but we're calling it mentoring. And I think that the small groups and the small group leaders, as it's rolled out within our leadership team, and then in the small groups, I think it's, like I said, when we talk about wanting catalysts, mm-hmm. you know, people to kind of run with it.
Yeah.
Those people that are the catalysts are already having conversations with people, trying to encourage them, trying to lead them through difficult life circumstances, all those things. And so I think bridging that gap between, hey, this isn't some, 3-week course to learn how to use this stuff. It's simply, you've already got the relationship.
Yeah.
All you're doing is bringing in a structured, kind of a structured way of sharing and discussing, having a conversation about God's truth.
Yeah. In fact, the simplest way to train someone up is just to take them through the conversation titled "How Groups and Mentoring Work," because it's basically just a real simple overview of what that means using the resources, and what the responsibilities of the mentor are and what the responsibilities of the mentee are. In fact, in the training, we say that's the first conversation you should have, because what it does is then it just clarifies what is this about here, and it explains, just the mentor's commitment is to model a pursuit of God, number one. Number two, to pray for the mentee, and number three, to schedule and run the meetings. Pretty simple. Did we lose you again, Adrian? Okay, we're going to cut this one short. I think you get the idea if you're preaching this sermon. You can watch this video a couple of times. Again, check this out online at just type in five habits in the search bar. You can find it. And if you're preaching it, good luck. Go get them. Pray up, make it your own, and preach it in the power of the Holy Spirit.